Hey everyone, and welcome to Group 7's presentation on Chapter 17, Integrate Hypothesis-Driven Development and A/B Testing into our daily work. Too often in software projects, developers work on features for months or years spanning multiple releases without ever confirming whether the desired business outcomes are being met. Certain instances are whether a particular feature is achieving the desired results or even being used at all. Or worse, even when we discover that a given feature isn't achieving the desired results, making corrections to the feature may be out-prioritized by other new features, ensuring that the underperforming feature will never achieve its intended business goal. Before we build a feature, we should ask ourselves, should we build it and why? Then we should perform the cheapest and fastest experiments that validate through user research whether the intended feature will actually achieve the desired outcomes. The techniques we can use are hypothesis-driven development, customer acquisition funnels, and A/B testing. Intuit provides a dramatic example of how organizations use these techniques to create products that customers love, to promote organizational learning, and to win in the marketplace. Intuit is focused on creating businesses and financial management solutions to simplify life for small businesses, consumers, and accounting professionals. In 2012, they had $4.5 billion in revenue and 8,500 employees with flagship products you may have heard of. They're called QuickBooks, TurboTax, Mint, and Quicken. Scott Cook, the founder of Intuit, has advocated for building a culture of innovations and encourages teams to take an experimental approach to product development. After years of testing and innovations, what we learn is that the faster we can experiment, iterate, and integrate feedback into our product, the faster we can learn and out-experiment the competition. Now, moving on to into the meat of the chapter. First, we'll have a brief history of A/B testing. As the Intuit model demonstrates, an extremely powerful research technique is defining the customer acquisition funnel and performing A/B testing. These techniques were pioneered in direct response marketing, which is one of two major marketing strategies. The other is mass marketing, or otherwise known as brand marketing, and relies on placing as many ad impressions in front of people as possible to persuade the consumer into purchasing the product. Before email and social media, ads were sent out in the mail via flyer or snail mail, which would ask the customer to call call a regular phone number, or return the postcard, or simply place an order. The experiments here were to demonstrate which offer had the highest success rate. They would experiment with changing or adapting the offer, rewording the offer, change the design or typography, change the packaging, or anything really to entice the consumer into responding more positively. As you can imagine, these variations cost thousands per trial and required weeks or months to complete. However, even though it was expensive, conversion rates still increased from 3% to 12%. Some well-documented examples are campaign fundraising, internet marketing, and the Lean Startup methodology. The Lean Startup methodology is defined as a methodology for developing businesses and products that aim to shorten product development cycles and rapidly discover if a proposed business model is viable. This is achieved by adopting a combination of business hypothesis-driven experimentation, iterative product releases, and validated learning.
Now, one of the most commonly used A/B techniques in the modern UX practice could involve using a website where visitors are randomly selected to be shown one of either two versions of a page. Either it would be the control or the A, or a treatment or the B. And then, based on these statistical analyses, uh, we can demonstrate whether there would be a significant difference in the outcomes of the two establishing a casual link between the treatment, which could be a change in a feature or a change of a design element or a change of background color, and the outcome, which could be like a different conversion rate or a different average order size. So, for an example, we can conduct an experiment to check and see whether modifying the text or color on a buy button would actually, if changing that would actually increase the revenue, or if slowing down the response time of a website using like an artificial uh, delay as a treatment, and seeing whether that would also reduce the revenue. And it's these little changes in these advertisements that could easily alter the size of the revenue. Now, sometimes the tests can be run with more than one variable, and it allows us to see all of these variables interact with each other. And this is a technique known as multivariate testing. However, running a lot of these tests could have some startling outcomes. For example, Ronnie Kohavi, a an engineer and general manager of the analysis and experimentation group at Microsoft, was observing that evaluating some well-designed and executed experiments that were made to improve a key metric, only one third were successful at improving it, which means that two-thirds of the other features either delivered a zero or negative value to the organization. Now, even though the features were originally thought out and are reasonable, good ideas, this sort of proves that there is a higher need for user testing over the intuition and expert opinions of the company. So it doesn't matter how good a feature is, you make sure that you have outside users testing it, and then get the results from them to see whether it was a good idea or a bad idea, and learn from those experiences. Now, one of the key importances for a fast and iterative A/B testing to be made possible is by being able to quickly and easily do production deployments on demand using like feature toggles and potentially delivering multiple versions of the code simultaneously to the customer segments. However, doing this requires useful production telemetry at all levels of the application stack. So, luckily, we can control this, which percentage of users would see the treatment version of an experiment. For example, we can have one half of the customers be on the treatment group and the other half be on the control or the following group, and we can compare the behavior of the control group, which sometimes no offer would be made, against the treatment group where the offer has been made, and perhaps measuring the number of purchases made in that session. Now, Etsy has had open source their experimentation framework feature API, formerly known as Etsy AB API, which not only supports that this sort of testing, but can also support online ramp ups and enabling the throttling exposure to the experiment. And then some of the other products include Optimizely, Google Analytics, et cetera, et cetera. And in 2004, Lacey Rhodes at Etsy described this thing on their journey, saying, "Experimentation at Etsy comes from a desire to make informed decisions and ensure that when we launch features for our millions of members, they work. Too often, we had features that took a long time and had to be maintained without any proof of their success or any popularity among users. AT A/B testing allows us to say a feature is worth working on as soon as it's underway. So what she's saying there is that like it is important to experiment with all the features and to make sure that the user interacts with them and also to make sure that the features do work as advertised or so that if it is a good idea then it might be used later on or improved upon in the future to make it more user friendly and a better experience to what is important here, and that is the customer.
Alright, so now we're going to talk about the integration of A/B testing into feature plans. Feature planning takes place after A/B implementation has been put into release and the testing stages. We need to make sure that the owners of the product think about each potential feature as a hypothesis. They should use our production releases as experiments with real users to prove or disprove said hypothesis. They should be designed into the context of the overall customer acquisition funnel. We can frame the hypothesis in a pretty standard form. The form is as follows: we believe, will result, and we will have confidence to proceed when. An example that we could give is, we believe that increasing the size of hotel images on the booking page will result in improved customer engagement and conversion. We will have confidence to proceed when we see a 5% increase in customers who review hotel images who then proceed to book in 48 hours. By using this approach, we break down our work into smaller units while also validating the results of each unit to see if it's producing the desired and expected outcomes. If they're not, we modify our roadmap with alternatives that will help us actually achieve the desired outcomes. Alright, so then on to the conclusion. So success doesn't just come from the quick deployment and release of software, but also the ability to out-experiment the competition. The techniques discussed and listed here allow us to perform user experiments safely and easily, which results in creativity, innovation, and the creation of organizational learning. And organizational learning is just as important, if not more important, than the success of the product, because it gives employees a feeling of ownership of business objectives as well as customer satisfaction. So yeah, thanks for watching.